You are abandoning yourself, and you are calling it love. You are pouring everything you have into someone, and the emptier you feel, the more you give. And somewhere deep inside, you already know something is wrong, but you cannot stop. This is not a relationship problem. This is a confrontation with your own unconscious. And what I am about to walk you through will change how you understand every bond you have ever had. There is a pattern that almost no one talks about openly. You show up fully for someone. You respond quickly, you make time, you prioritize them, you offer your energy without being asked, and slowly, invisibly, the other person begins to drift. Not because you did something wrong, but because something inside them shifted the moment they stopped feeling any risk of losing you. Carl Jung once described a force within every human being that operates entirely beneath conscious awareness. He called it the shadow, the part of us we refuse to see. And what most people never realize is that the shadow does not only contain darkness, it also holds truths you have been avoiding about yourself. Here's one of those truths. When you give everything to another person without requiring anything in return, you are not being generous, you are negotiating. You are trying to earn love by becoming indispensable. And this negotiation has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with a wound you carry that says you are not enough as you are. Jung would call this a projection. You have taken your own unmet need for validation and placed it entirely onto another person. And the moment you do that, you hand over something sacred, your inner authority. You stop being a whole individual and become a reflection of someone else's attention. Think about this carefully. When you check your phone waiting for their response, what are you really waiting for? When you reread old messages searching for clues, what are you really searching for? It is not information about them, it is reassurance about yourself. You are asking another person to tell you that you matter. And every time you ask that question externally, you move further from the only place where the answer actually lives, inside you. The unconscious does not forget this betrayal. Every time you hand someone else the authority over your worth, a part of you registers the abandonment. Not the abandonment by the other person, the abandonment of yourself by yourself. And that's the wound that keeps the cycle spinning. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The person pulling away from you is not doing it to hurt you. In most cases, they do not even understand what is happening. But unconsciously, something in them registers a shift. When you become completely available, completely certain, completely devoted without friction, their psyche files you into a category. Not a category of love, a category of safety. And safety without tension creates something Jung identified as psychic stagnation. Growth requires opposition. The psyche needs polarity to stay alive. When everything is settled, when there is no mystery, no gap, no question, the unconscious mind begins to wander. Not because the love is gone, but because the dynamic has lost its charge. Jung observed this in his clinical work over and over. Two people deeply compatible, deeply caring, and yet slowly drifting apart. Not from conflict, but from the absence of it. Not from cruelty, but from comfort. The very stability they both wanted became the thing that drained the life from the connection. This is the paradox nobody explains to you. The more completely you offer yourself, the less psychologically compelling you become. Not because you lack value, but because value in the unconscious mind is tied to what might be lost, not to what is guaranteed. And this is where the real transformation begins. Not out there with the other person, in here with you. Jung spent his entire career mapping what he called individuation, the process by which a person becomes who they truly are beneath all the masks and accommodations. Individuation is not about becoming selfish, it is about becoming whole. And a whole person does not pour themselves out hoping to be filled by someone else. If you are finding this resonates with something deep inside you, consider subscribing.
What we explore here is not surface advice, it is the kind of inner work that changes everything once you truly see it. Now, let me take you further into this. Imagine a woman. Let us call her Claire. Claire is intelligent, warm, deeply empathetic. She has always been the one who holds relationships together. She remembers birthdays, she checks in, she adjusts herself to make others comfortable. And in her romantic life, she does the same thing, amplified. She gives more than she receives, and she tells herself this is love. But underneath that giving, there is a quiet desperation she rarely admits. She is terrified that if she stops performing, the other person will leave. So she never stops. And the man in her life, he settles into it. He gets comfortable. He starts responding less. He starts showing up less. Not because he is cruel, but because he unconsciously senses that Claire will always be there, regardless of what he does. Claire notices the shift. She feels the distance growing, and her first instinct is to give even more, to close the gap by being more available, more affectionate, more accommodating. But the gap does not close, it widens. This is what Jung would call an enantiodromia, a moment where something turns into its opposite. The very effort Claire makes to hold the relationship together is the force pushing it apart. And if you're honest with yourself right now, you have probably lived some version of this story. You have probably felt that sinking feeling when your best efforts produced the opposite result. You gave more and they gave less. You leaned in and they leaned away. And you blamed yourself because that was easier than seeing the pattern for what it was. Now here's the turning point that most people miss entirely. The solution is not to become cold or to play games or to manufacture distance. Manipulation is just another mask, another layer of persona covering the real self. The solution is something far more radical. It is to come home to yourself. When Claire stops orienting her entire life around this man and begins investing in her own becoming, something shifts that cannot be faked. She starts pursuing her own interests, not as a strategy, but because she remembers she has a life worth living on its own terms. She picks up the book she put down 3 months ago. She calls the friend she has been neglecting. She signs up for the thing she kept postponing because she was too busy managing his emotions. She stops checking her phone every few minutes, not because she is pretending not to care, but because she is genuinely engaged in something that matters to her. And the man feels it, not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly. In the quiet of an evening, he notices her absence. Not her physical absence, but the absence of her anxious energy directed at him. The absence of the constant reaching, the constant checking, the constant accommodation. And that absence creates space. And in that space, his own unconscious begins to stir. Something in him wakes up that had gone dormant. A question he had stopped asking himself begins to surface again. Does she still want me? And for the first time, he doesn't know the answer. He starts thinking about her differently. Where before she was predictable, now she is a mysterious. Where before she was a certainty, now she is a question.
And questions are what keep the psyche alive. He reaches for his phone. He types a message. He hesitates. He rewrites it. He actually cares how it lands. For the first time in months, he is investing emotional energy instead of passively receiving it. And he does not understand why this shift happened. He just knows that something about her feels different now. Something about her feels like a choice he needs to make, rather than a comfort he already has. This is what Jung meant when he described the tension of opposites as the engine of psychological life. When both people in a relationship are too comfortable, the energy dies. When one person reclaims their own center of gravity, the polarity returns, and with polarity comes desire, attention, and genuine effort. But here is the part that requires the most discipline. When the other person starts showing up again,
When the messages come more frequently, when the effort returns, the temptation is enormous. You want to rush back into the old pattern. You want to pour yourself out again because it feels so good to be wanted. And if you do that, the entire cycle restarts. The real mastery is maintaining your wholeness, even when the relationship improves. It is continuing to build your own life. It is continuing to honor your own standards, not as a power play, but as a way of living that reflects who you have become. Jung called this holding the tension, the ability to sit with contradictory forces without collapsing into one side. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to disappear into them. You can want closeness and still protect your solitude. You can be open to connection and still say no when something does not align with who you are. This is not coldness, this is maturity. This is what it looks like when someone has done the inner work. Because here is the deepest insight Jung ever offered about human connection. You cannot truly love another person until you have a self to offer. And a self is not something you build once. It is something you maintain daily through choices that honor your own depth. Every time you choose yourself over anxious accommodation, you send a signal, not to the other person, though they receive it, to your own unconscious. You tell yourself that you are worth protecting, that your peace matters, that your life has meaning beyond being chosen by someone else. And when a person begins to live from that place, everything around them reorganizes. The people who stayed because you were convenient start to leave, and the people who are drawn to your authenticity start to stay. Not because you manipulated the dynamic, because you changed the signal you were broadcasting. You stopped broadcasting need. You started broadcasting presence. And presence, true, grounded presence, is the most magnetically attractive force a human being can emit. This is individuation in action. This is the shadow work nobody tells you about, the part where you stop performing love and start living it. The part where you look in the mirror and finally see someone who does not need to be chosen to feel whole. He is sitting alone on a quiet evening. He opens his phone, he looks at your conversation, and he writes 3 words he has not said in a long time. I miss you. And this time, it is not habit, it is not boredom. It is the honest ache of a man who just realized the woman in front of him is not waiting around for him to decide. She has already decided for herself. You read the message, you smile, and you do not respond right away. Not because you were playing a game, because you are in the middle of your own life. And that, more than anything you could ever say or do, is what makes you unforgettable. The question is not whether he will come closer. The question is whether you will stay rooted in who you are when he does. Because the woman who transforms a relationship is not the one who figured out the right strategy. She is the one who finally stopped abandoning herself and called it love. And if this reached something inside you today, leave a comment and tell me what you recognized. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply name what you have been carrying in silence.